that's where we're going to kind of begin, is that the thing that we need to understand with all things Google compared to Microsoft and some other software programs out there is that all things Google exist in the cloud. And the cloud is just a euphemism for the internet, using our computers through a browser like Google Chrome, or some people use Firefox. Let's just start right there. Anytime you're doing anything with Google, whether it's Google Drive, Docs, Sheets, whatever it is, always use the Google Chrome browser. And when we get to the point where we're opening up a browser, I'm going to show you what the icon looks like for that. And the reason is very simple, is because anytime they introduce a new feature or have a new drop-down menu item or something like that in any of the Google apps, they work perfectly with Google Chrome. For example, if you're using Google Docs and you want to be able to use your voice to write down text on your Google Docs, you cannot do that in Firefox. You have to have Google Chrome browser to be able to do that. And there's lots of features that are really amazing that you cannot do with some of the other competitors' browsers. And the reason is simple. Google makes sure that all of its products work well one with another. And so keep that in mind. So Google Drive, it happens in the cloud. It happens over the internet through our browser. And it seems like it's happening on our computer. Why we see it on our monitor through our browser. We use our mouse, we click around on things, we use our keyboard. And something important to remember is that every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard, at near the speed of light is going through our browser. Yeah, that thing where we do Google searches or we access our email when we're at home or away from our school site. Um, and so all things Google happen in the cloud. They don't actually happen on our computer. Microsoft does. When we download a program like Microsoft Word or Excel, we are actually putting that on our computer, whether it's a laptop or maybe it's a like some kind of an iPad or it's a desktop computer. We're actually putting that program on the hard drive of our computer. And because that's where it exists on our computer, it can be a much bigger, more robust program. And it's true, you were going to be probably mentioning that more than once today, that like Microsoft Word is on order of about 100 times more powerful, if not more, than its Google counterpart, Google Docs. And Microsoft Excel is at least 100 times more powerful than Google Sheets. And it has primarily to do with the fact that all things Microsoft are put on your computer's hard drive. It's a much bigger, more robust program, whereas the Google ones have to be, I guess the best word for it is kind of dumbed down or made more simple because of bandwidth, because of all the little data packets going back and forth from your computer through your browser, through your internet connection to the Google server farms. And once we understand that's kind of how Google works, then it kind of explains a lot of peculiar things that happens. So think of little data packets going back and forth at near the speed of light. Every time we click on the mouse or we type something on our keyboard, we can imagine then that sometimes things don't work right, or something that we're working on gets lost, or a file that we had just a little bit ago now disappears and it's not there, only to reappear an hour or two later, or even the next day. Yeah, all of these things happen with all things Google, and it has to do with that data going back and forth. So a Google server farm, think of a Costco warehouse times four with floor to ceiling, top of the line computers, state of the art computers. And that's what they're called servers. And all of our accounts, all of our data, all of our docs, everything in our drive is there at those Google server farms. And and so that's just kind of the way it works. And once we realize that, then we might understand better, like, hey, it seems like Google Drive or one of the other Google apps looks different than it did the last time I opened this a day ago or before lunch or something. And that's because Google can change things whenever they want to, and they change it all the time. It's a product. We're their customers. They want to impress us and make us happy with whatever they have. And in this case, we're talking about Drive. And so they update items in Drive all the time or change things, hopefully for us to be happy with. Sometimes we're upset with that. We're like, oh my gosh, why did they change it? I like the way that it was. But just remember, they're trying to make those changes so that that we like the product more and we're going to use it more. But that can be frustrating if things get changed, and they do all the time. Let's compare that to Microsoft Word 2016. If you have that on your computer for 12 years straight, it's not going to change for those 12 years until you download a newer version or a different version. And again, because Google's in the cloud, those very smart men and women can change that anytime they want. And also, as a side note, we are all part of the sandy.net Google domain, which essentially just means that we have another person, an administrator for the district, who can also make decisions about all things Google and what we see on our screen. And we'll see some examples of that. So that's Google Drive. It's just a place, kind of like our desktop or a computer's hard drive, where we get to store all of our docs and sheets, and even Microsoft Word and other products like by Adobe, like PDFs and pictures and things. We get to store that in our drive, but it's in the cloud. Which the best thing of all is that you never have to save anything because it's automatically being saved. And if your computer ever fails for whatever reason, you could be anywhere in the world, get a new computer, and as long as you have your login credentials, why you can access your Google Drive account and all of the stuff that you have in there anytime, and it's there waiting for you and available. And that's a huge plus. And then almost as wonderful as that is the idea of sharing something. So you've probably tried this before where you and someone else are both editors for a Google Doc or a Google Sheet or something. And we're able to do that because of cloud computing. This is all happening in the cloud. And so we can share our documents with whomever we want as long as they have, we give them access to one of our Google Docs or Google Sheets or forms, then they have access to it, and we can all be looking at it, using it, working with it at the same time, anywhere in the world, as long as we have our credentials to log in and the password and all of that. So that's why Google is very popular, and it's kind of taking over education and pretty much everywhere in the world. So that's pretty cool. And we'll be talking more about those details as we go along. The Google Drive support pages, what is that? Google Drive support pages, when you get on your Google search and you say, how do you do X, Y, and Z, like say in Microsoft Word 2016, you're going to get all kinds of videos and different support for that. Well, Google has something called the support pages, where they're very smart men and women engineers. They write down all the details, step by step, screen instructions. Sometimes it's a little video or whatever, but those support pages will tell you how to do anything you want to do in Google Drive or any of the Google products. And it's kind of like an online handbook. And all you have to do is search for whatever it is you're trying to figure out. If you want to know how to share a folder in Google Drive, just ask Google, how do you share a folder in Google Drive? And the support pages will open up and it will show you everything that you need to know to be able to do that. All right, we're going to completely go over the Google Drive user interface. We're not just going to talk about it. We're going to click on everything, and just know that that user interface will change from day to day sometimes, or week to week, or month to month. And we're going to be looking today to see if anything's changed on it since the last time we used it. But we'll go over that user interface and figure out how it works, at least how it works today. We'll also talk about how to upload files and folders, really important. As I mentioned before, we can put all kinds of stuff in our Google Drive. We could store docs and sheets. We can store folders that we share with our other paraeducators. We can actually have a folder that has all Microsoft stuff in it. We can do that. And so we're going to show you how to do exactly that. And as part of that, how to organize those files and folders, because some of you, if you're fairly new with Google Drive, you'll be aware how easily it is to become frustrated when we can't find something we were just using and now it's gone, or a folder that someone shared with us. So we're going to go over the shared with me and all of that. We're going to talk about some general rules to follow, especially when you're new, some suggestions that I have, ones that I follow, even though I've been using Google since the early 2010s. I still follow these rules so that it's easy for me to find things and organize things. So we'll go over all of that. Um, so this is interesting. I'm going to show you briefly in a moment my Google Drive associated with my Yahoo email account. That's my personal Google Drive. And it will state on there very clearly, like, hey, you want to buy some more storage? Do you want to have a larger storage thing? You can pay us X amount of dollars per month and you can store more things. Well, our school district, thank heavens, um, has decided that we have unlimited storage. So that is very wonderful. That means that we can store as many things as we want in there. We don't have to worry about ever paying for it. Thank you, San Diego Unified. And that works well for me because I have many videos, kind of like the one being recorded now, that I store in there as MP4s. And it's nice that we have unlimited storage. So OCR practice. OCR stands for optical character recognition, and that's a technology that's been around for decades, but Google has employed rather well in their Google Docs and in their Google Drive. And what does that mean? OCR is optical character recognition. It just means that if we have a PDF with a bunch of writing on it, maybe some words or some numbers, maybe there's some check boxes or some lines, like where we sign our name, or maybe there's a table with lots of information. Google has a software that helps us to turn that into, in this case, a Google Doc. It works extremely well, if not perfectly, with letters and numbers, but not so well with tables and checkboxes and lines and things like that. And we'll show you what it can do and what some suggestions are as how you can use that. All right, find, recover, or restore files. Super important. If we can't find something, well, what's the best way to locate it? If it's something we were working on with our colleagues just 3 days ago, what's the best way to find that? Or if we remember the name of it, but we can't find that file or that folder anywhere in our other folders, well, understanding how to upload files and organize files and folders, that's going to help a great deal so we don't get things lost. But when they do get lost, how can we find them, recover, and restore them? We're going to go through that. And that has to do also with the file search feature. So Google search in the last 2 years has gotten so much better than it was before. And as I mentioned before, the very smart men and women engineers from Google are always adding new features, trying to make, in this case, Google Drive better. The Google search has gotten so much better, so it's very easy now compared to what it was before. For the last couple of years now, it's much easier to find stuff. We're going to go through that in great detail and show you all of the features that they've come up with to do that. So I had mentioned before that we could bring in a PDF and Google Docs could read it in our drive. I talked about Microsoft Word or Excel file we can store in our drive. We can also take that Microsoft Word file and turn it into a Google Docs. We can take the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a Google Sheet. And that can be very helpful. But there's a couple ways of doing that, and we're going to go over those details so that you can see the best way to do that. And next, Google Drive notifications. I'll just show you in settings where that is because some of us like to get emails. Some of us like to have a little message pop up at the bottom of our browser when we're working, or some of us like to have both. We'll show you where that happens. File sharing. Again, we talked about that briefly. One of the most significant features of all things Google is the ability to share asynchronously or in real time, to be able to work on the same document or spreadsheet or in the same folder, adding things to a group folder that we have. We could all be doing that from anywhere in the world, as long as we have an internet connection and we're logged into our account. We can be doing that at the same time as our colleagues. And so sharing is a wonderful aspect of all things Google. All right, and I'll probably mention this or at least show you where this is here shortly. Google Drive videos on YouTube. Yes, there's millions of them, but we have a San Diego Unified Office Skills YouTube channel. It's one that I've created, and there are probably 50 plus, if I had to guess, videos in there. Entire trainings like the one today that will be recorded and edited and then turned into about a 2-hour video. There's full classes as well as shorter little tips and tricks videos and just about everything in between. And we're going to show you where those are. And also for the paraeducators of the table that was sent out to all of you. I don't have it handy right now, but there's a link in there as well that I put where it explains about what this class is. And on that link, I'll have a link to the YouTube channel. Otherwise, you'll have to go find it in the San Diego staff portal somewhere. But that's what we're going to be covering today. And again, when we get to the end of this, by all means, we will open this up for open-ended questions about anything and all things Google Drive first. And then after we answer all of those questions, why we can go into all things Google, and then if all those questions are answered and you have a Microsoft question, well, this is your lucky day because we get to dive into any of those things. So thank you so much for being with us today. And let me get out of here and show you a couple of things that we have real quick. All right. I will just mention this. Our training calendar is under construction right now because we're just finishing up our winter quarter or term, if you will, in March, which ends this Friday before break. So classes are being set up right now for April, May, and June. And this is specifically with all things Microsoft and Google. These are courses that I teach, and I teach nearly every day, as well as Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I typically have an open lab available where people can sign up and come and work on whatever it is you have that you're interested in. And this is one that's under construction, so these links aren't live yet. Whereas, for example, the Google Forms class, you can just click on there and go straight to it for this Friday. So that's important to be aware of, that calendar. And here is our YouTube channel, San Diego Unified Office Skills Training. And we've got a whole bunch of videos here. Some are shorter ones, how to do different things, and some are longer, like the Google Sheets training we did for a psychologist department. There's also full-length trainings that are available just in general, as well as many, many different videos that will help you do all kinds of things with all things Microsoft and Google. And again, the link to that is in the notes on the table that was sent out to you by your department. So one of the documents that we're going to open up today and see is a Microsoft Word document called Quotes from Famous Authors. Just happens to be 4 of my favorite authors with a little bit of information about them and some quotes. It's got Faulkner and Hemingway and a few others. We're going to be taking this Microsoft Word document in our drive, and we're going to be turning it into a 100% Google Doc. So that's one thing we're going to do. And I just wanted you to be able to see what that looks like, because when we put it in all things Google, it's going to look exactly the same. And then we have an Excel workbook that has several worksheets, last name, comma space first, full names, all these different parts to it. And this is 100% an Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to put it in our drive, and we're going to turn it into a Google Sheets. And it's going to look exactly like this, just with the Google Sheets user interface. So I wanted you to see what that looks like. And then we also have a PDF. PDFs are Adobe product, and Adobe is a competitor to Google, just like Microsoft is. But Google allows us to take a PDF, and this is just a generic one that I got from a couple years ago, from the San Diego Unified Group Health Benefits, some department or whatever. And this is like something you would see. It's a little form that you're supposed to fill out and sign. It's only a half page long. We can see that there's a few paragraphs here. Down here, this part is bolded. We see a signature and date spot with some lines. We see some check boxes. Couple more check boxes over here, and then it's just some general information that's in a table. And so we're going to see how, when we bring this into Google Docs, what the OCR software is good at and what it's not so good at. And just a heads up, all things printed as far as words, lettering, and numbers, those come through perfectly. The exact font, bolded, all of those things. What it struggles with are tables and checkboxes and lines, and we'll see that. But I wanted you to see up front one of the things that we were going to bring into our drive. And so this is my sandy.net Google Drive account. It's part of the sandy.net Google domain. And if you've opened up your drive, it's going to look very similar. Having said that, I have my own folders and my own files down here. And the way that it is set up right now, which happens to be in grid mode, it's kind of like these little tiles, or down here, I've got all my different files. I know that's a Google Docs because of that little blue icon. This is a Google Sheets. This is a shortcut to a doc. Down here is a slide, a Google slide. And so I've got this like little preview here because that's the way I have it set up. And Google calls that grid layout. It's like little thumbnails, previews. And so we could see that these folders here, there's different colors. Some of them have like a little share icon, a person in there showing me that it's shared. Some have like a little curved arrow, which means that it's a shortcut. So that's actually not where the folder is, but we're seeing the folder like right up here. And it's actually somewhere else. We'll be diving a little bit deeper to all of that. But these are my folders. And these are my files. And it's set up this way by choice. And I will tell you right now, it's in alphanumeric ordering, ascending, which means A's come before Z's, and 1 through infinity comes before the letters A through Z, and then punctuation marks, like these little dots, those come before the actual numbers. And we're going to talk about that, how I set it up that way, why I keep it that way, and what some of the pitfalls are if you decide to keep it some other way. Because if anything, Google gives us too many choices. And so if we're fairly new to Drive and we're just kind of seeing, clicking here and there and seeing what the different things are and what's this and what are these options here if I click that, and oh, here's an ellipsis. I will tell you right now that we just call that like a more button, whether it's ellipsis vertically or horizontally. That just means there's more things that you can see. And so as we click around, suddenly nothing looks like it did before. And so that can be very frustrating when we can't find something, or just the way that your desktop, if you will, we can call this a desktop. Sometimes people call it a home page. It's basically our Google Drive. We have our search thing at the top that's been there for a long time. We have this new button right here that was blue at one point. It was red before that, or I might have got those backwards. It might have been blue first and then red. I can't remember, but they're changing stuff all the time. This home tab right here showed up just about a month or so ago. Before that, it was called priority. And I never liked the priority feature. And I think that's one of the reasons why they got rid of it. So now they have this new home thing, and we'll talk about that and what it looks like now, and why, again, I still don't like it, and why I prefer the old school way of doing it. Just so that you understand what your choices are and you can make an informed decision on that. We have this activity button that's new, workspaces, that's all within the last month or so. That's cool. Here's our Drive file tree. It's the same thing as our Drive, but a different way to look at it. Because I'm part of the training department, I have a shared drive with other trainers. You may have in your department also a shared drive, which is different than the folder that's called Shared with Me. That's Shared with Me is where anyone from anywhere in the district shares a folder or file with you. That's where you're going to find it. And from there, you can set up little shortcuts like this to be in your drive, so you don't have to always go to the Shared with Me. But that has changed over the years of how it's being used and all of that. We're going to get into the subtleties of that as well. This is wonderful. You may remember just a month or two ago, there was a suggested little section up here, and it only had like 4 or 5 things across here. Maybe it was a file or a folder you opened recently, and it would be in the suggested section up there. Well, that's not even there anymore. They got rid of that. Before it was called suggested, it was called recent. And nobody liked it because you could only see 5 recent things, or 4, depending on how zoomed in you were on your user interface. And so finally, Google said, okay, we get it. You want to see all the recents. Like if you've been working with 10 different things today, you don't want to just see 4 or 5 suggested ones. You want to see all of them. And so this became available, which is wonderful. I guess Microsoft owns favorites, so Google called their favorites starred. And then this showed up a couple months ago, spam. We'll take a look at that. and then trash and storage below that. And just real quick, you can see I have 27.78 gigabytes used because I have a lot of videos. Real quick, up here in my Google Chrome browser, you can see I got my mail there and some other uh, websites up there that are available to me. And real quick, how do I know this is Google Chrome? Because one, that's all I use. But if I go straight down, you'll see the little Google Chrome icon. It's red, kind of goldish yellow, green, and a circle with a blue dot in the middle. And that's Google Chrome. And that's the only one you should be using with all things Google, because otherwise some features will not be available to you, or they just won't work right. So make sure you're always in Google Chrome. We have some other things over here. Here's where you can get some support. Here's our settings. We're going to go into that. Right here, this is the Google Apps waffle, they sometimes call it. If I click on that, you can see there's a whole bunch of different apps there. And just in case you didn't know, you can left click and drag things around. So if Forms is something you use every day, you might want that at the top. If Google Sites is something you use every day, you might not want that at the top. So you can move things around pretty easily with that. But I want you to notice that right here is a picture of me, and if I hover over it, it's my sandy.net email address, which means I'm part of the sandy.net Google domain. And what you won't notice here is Gmail. In fact, I could scroll down and I won't see the icon anywhere for Gmail. And why is that? Because the sandy.net Google domain administrator decided, along with, I'm sure, several people in the district that are part of the IT department, that we are going to continue using Outlook. So what I was going to show you is that unlike our sandy.net Google domain account, where the Google Waffle app, or the Apps Waffle right here, doesn't have Gmail because the district wants us to be using Outlook, in my personal Google Drive, and I know this is my personal account because I see a picture of my wife and I, and if I hover over it, it says Yahoo. If I click on this, you'll see Gmail's right there, front and center at the top. So that's a difference. So just know that the very smart men and women engineers for all things Google are constantly upgrading and changing the way that things look on our user interface in all of the apps because they're trying to make it better, but also some things may or may not show up in our sandy.net Google domain because of the network administrator for a district. They have a choice, such as not including Gmail. And then just real quick, you'll see down here, it all kind of looks the same as far as the layout. But down here it says I've used 3.4 gigabytes of the 15 that are free, and it's already trying to sell me more storage. Again, that's not for the San Diego Unified one. That's for my own personal one. So thank you to San Diego Unified for giving us unlimited storage. That's helpful. But if you like using Gmail, unfortunately, we don't get to use it with Calendar and have it all connected. It's part of that whole Google system of apps. But that's okay. All right, so then we have this, which I hovered over before. This little feature right here just showed up a month or two ago. And I was so grateful because before it was a little bit confusing. You had to kind of know that this was grid layout and that there was a different option when you went to click on a little icon that was up here. Now we can see that there's a checkbox here. If we hover over it, it says, hey, grid layout. Well, what's the other one? List layout. All right. Well, we're going to see that in just a second. And then last but not least, view details. We're going to go towards that at the end. And this is amazing, the details that you can find about when something was changed or submitted to a folder, if you're sharing a folder for someone. All kinds of information about these folders and the files that are within those folders and folders inside those folders and so on and so forth, who it's shared with, how it's shared, who has access to what, and when they add things and take things away and all that, all from this wonderful feature here. But real quick, just know that I prefer grid layout, and I strongly recommend you sticking to one or the other. And if I had to make a choice, I would tell you to do this one, because if you're visual like I am, and we're all different, so that's why Google gives us so many different options. Maybe you don't want to see something as big. You'd rather see a list rather than these little thumbnails that kind of give us an indication as to what these things are. So if that were the case, we would click this. But before I do that, I want you to notice that I have my folders and my files And to be clear, every folder and file inside those folders are all organized by name in alphanumeric ordering ascending. What does that mean? That means the punctuation marks come first. We see some dots there, a few less dots. There's just one dot here. And then that's followed by the numbers, starting with the smaller numbers, 2020, and it goes up to 2023, followed by the alphabet. So we see our A's, we don't have any B's, we have a C, and it keeps going up this way until we get to the Z's all the way here at the end. And then down here, the files are organized the same way. Start off with punctuation marks, eventually we get into numbers, and after the numbers, at some point, we get into the ABCs. So again, I strongly recommend you keep the ordering of your files and folders and everything inside those files and folders all by name alphanumerically in ascending order. What's descending order? It just means the Z's would be at the top and the A's would be at the bottoms, or in this case, the numbers and the punctuation marks. Why would I suggest that? Well, let's just look at what the other options are real quick. Last modified by me, last opened by me. So if you have a shared folder and last modified, whether you modified it or someone else did, if you had that selected, whatever was last modified would end up right here. And whatever hasn't been touched in the longest time would be down there. Okay, I could kind of see how that would be helpful if it was like, oh, I was just working on this a minute ago. Let's go find it. Well, it should be right here. But I will tell you that that is one of the most confusing ways to do it, because when you have lots of stuff, and most of us have lots of things, lots of folders, lots of files, the last thing you want to do to find a folder is to have to read every one of them to see where yours is. If I know that my folder starts with a Z, I look simply to the end. If I know it starts with a T, it's somewhere in the T section. If it has punctuation marks, it's going to be somewhere near the front. In fact, I name these folders with punctuation marks because I want them in the prime position. So I use the ordering by name alphanumerically in ascending order so that it's easy for me to find things. And again, every folder inside these folders is exactly the same way. What's the other option? As far as grid view, if we keep it by name, I'm just going to switch it now to list layout. So now we see the exact same folders and files, but in list layout. And it gives a little bit different information here. And there's that ellipsis, so we know that there's more options there. But we can see, remember I said the punctuation marks go first, and I had put the punctuation marks on this one because I wanted it in the prime position. There it is at the top. So punctuation marks, there's just one punctuation mark there, followed by 2020, and of course it's ascending up to 2023. And then we have our ABCs, and if I just scroll down a little bit, I get down to the Z's, and these are the last couple of folders, and then the files start. If you've been around a while and you have a filing cabinet, then folders and files, we use those words interchangeably, but just understand that a folder is something that holds files as far as Google's concerned. So you're going to hear me calling folders, and files, things like a Google Docs file, a Google Sheets file, a shortcut to a Google Docs file, a Google Slides file, and so on and so forth. So again, I have it by name in alphanumeric ordering ascending. So there's the folders in the same way. Yeah, I don't see the little picture of these things. I don't get like a little preview of it. I have to know that this is a Google slide because of that icon. I don't really get to see what that one looks like. Whereas if I simply go back, and we can see the check mark is there for list layout. If I go back, then again, if you're a visual learner like I am, then this makes it much easier to say, oh, that's that for the slides presentation that I did the other day. That was one of the slide shows with the horses. Okay. And here's a Google form on the solar system. I remember doing that. And so it's easy for me to find something I'm looking for. Okay. So that's enough about those things. And again, you could change this to whatever you want in any form you want. But I strongly suggest when you start out, keeping it in a way that's familiar. And this is how we will keep ours for the rest of the time right now. So let's talk about these folders. You see some have different colors. They're all called different things. How do we make a folder? Well, as is in any good program, there's always more than one way to do something. So let's take a look at this new button first. We're going to go through all of these things in a minute. But let's look at the new button real quick. If I click on it, I get this little pop-out window, this little menu here. It says, okay, new folder right there. I can simply click on that and a new folder will be made somewhere. We'll talk about that in a second, where it goes. If I want to upload a file, like if I have a Microsoft Excel file or something, I could do that. What if I have a folder with a bunch of other folders and files in it? Can I bring that into my drive? I can. Let's talk about for a moment the fact that it says upload. All the time we're at a restaurant, it says, hey, download our menu. Or you go to a bank, it says, oh, do you have our banking app? You know, you can deposit that check with our banking app. Just download it to your phone. Well, downloading simply means we're taking off of the internet or the cloud that program and we're downloading it out of the cloud onto basically the memory of your device, whether it's a phone, a laptop, or a desktop computer. But remember, Drive doesn't exist on your computer. We see it and interact with it on our computer's monitor using our keyboard and our mouse to click and interact with it. But again, at near the speed of light through our browser, every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard is being recorded at the Google server farms. And that's why if we're going to, I'm going to pull back the little Google Drive here for a second. And this is the desktop of my computer that I have right now. We can see that this is an Excel file. Right here is a folder with a bunch of files in it and other folders. Here's another one, the same. Here's a Microsoft Word file. And right here's a PDF. That's an Adobe file. And so if I want to get those off of my computer and upload them into Drive, there's a couple ways that I can do that. We're going to explore that, but that's why it's called uploading. Very important to understand the difference. So if I want a new Google Doc, I can click there and do that, or Sheets, the same, Slides, Forms, and a whole bunch of different things. So all of that came from the new button. That's fantastic. And we're going to make a new folder here right now for our class today where we're going to put everything, because we're also going to be talking about the navigation bar that appears right here. And this is one of the most important things that you can pay attention to, because if you've ever made a folder or you've created a file, maybe it's a Google Doc or something, and you can't find it, chances are it was saved somewhere that you didn't intend. And so we're going to be very purposeful here and intentional by understanding where we are at all times. So these are the folders that are in my drive. And then inside these folders are many more folders, and then some folders inside of that. And as we drill down on these, we'll see the navigation bar tell us where we are. So for example, Google Classes, I'm just going to double click on this. So now I was in my drive and I'm inside Google Classes, and look at all the folders I have. And I have a file here. And you'll notice that folders are always on top, followed by files. And again, we're in alphanumeric order, ascending. So numbers come before alphabet, and then the alphabet, it goes all the way to Z, or in this case, it's a T is the largest one I have. And since I only have one Excel file, and by the way, that's an Excel file. It's green, and it looks like Google Sheets, but it's got an X in it. So that is an Excel file. And we see the extension there is 100% Microsoft. We'll be talking more about that in just a second. So now if I'm in my Google Classes folder and I want to go inside of another folder, inside this folder, I can drill down, double click on it. And so now it tells me I'm inside that, and I still have more folders. And I could then click on some of these other things and go a little bit deeper. In fact, if I go too deep and there's not room to show the path that I'm on, then an ellipsis shows up, and we'll just double click on this one just to show you. And so you saw that when I was in the 2019-2020, I double clicked on the February 13th one, and inside there is still another folder, and there might be more folders in there, but there's this ellipsis here. And the little tip window says show path, and you just click on it. So I started in my drive, double clicked or drilled down into Google Classes. And then from there, I drilled down or double clicked on the 2019-2020 folder. And then when that opened up, I double clicked on the February 13th, and I still have another one, and who knows how many more are inside that. So that's the path. This is the navigation for all this. And why do we call this a navigation path or a navigation bar? Because I can use it to travel with. And click there. If I want to go into the Google Classes folder, I can do that. If I want to go back to my drive, I can do that. So again, what comes up here? wherever we are and whatever we're inside of. So again, I just did Google Classes. And by the way, if I go now to here and I create a folder or open up one of these, or I drag like this Excel file into my Google Classes folder, where is it going to end up? All of it's going to end up in Google Classes. You have to know where you are because that's where it's going to end up. Can we move it later if we want to? Sure, but that's a nuisance. So in my drive, I had double clicked on Google Classes. Then I went into 2019, 2020, and then I went into February 13th. And when there was no more room up here, it gave us a path up here to show that we had gone to these places first and then drilled down. All right. That's important to understand where you are at all times because wherever you are, again, when you drag something in or bring it in to your Google Drive, it's going to end up wherever you are. Well, we don't want things to end up here, so we're just going to go back to Drive. So here's another way to get back to Drive, just by clicking there. There's always more than one way to do it. And we want a new folder here. And we already know we can go to New and just click New Folder. But guess what? In my classes, you'll hear about left clicking, right clicking, double clicking, triple clicking, and depending on where you are, different things will happen. Well, again, that was to click on the new button, but over here, if I just right click, we get the same menu. Okay, new folder. Perfect. Now we're going to name it. And because this is just a temporary folder and it's for today's class, I'm going to call it just that. So when I see it, I know that I can toss it out and get rid of it. So I'm just going to call it today's folder. All right. And so because I have all of my folders and files and everything inside of them, all in alphanumeric ordering by name, where are we going to assume that today's folder is going to land? It'll be with the T's. So I'm going to go ahead and say create. And sure enough, there it is, today's folder. It's right there with the T's. Okay. But I actually want it up here because we're going to go to it many times today, and I want it to be easy to get to. So because I understand alphanumeric ordering, I can simply go here and, oh, there's an ellipsis. Let's see if we can rename it with this. Okay, there's the rename button. Well, you know what? There's always an easier way to do something. Rather than get right there, very specific, how would I just go down anywhere and right click on it? And now we see the rename. So we get this whole thing again. I'm going to put my cursor in the front. And I'm going to put a few dots there because I have alphanumeric ordering. And so by presumably naming it that, I now have it in the prime position. So it's much easier to find. But wait, there's more. What else is in the more actions here? Right click at the same menu. I can go down to organize. This changed a couple of months ago, the way they do it. So I could move it around to somewhere else. I could add a shortcut to somewhere. I could put it in my favorites. That's cool. I could also download it. What does that mean? Takes it out of the cloud and puts it on your computer. That's kind of cool. But for right now, organize, I'm just going to make it red so it stands out. I know I've got a few other red ones, but that's okay. So there's my today's folder. And when I drill down on it, double click, you can see that's what we're in. And then we get this little message, hey, drop files here. Okay, let's see what that looks like. I'm not going to actually drop this file in here, but I'm going to left click and hold it and move it in so we can take a look at it. All right. So right here where I'm going around in circles, you can see there's a blue plus copy little sign right there. And then if I look very all the way down at the bottom, it says drop files to unload them to, where are we? We're in the today's folder. Okay. So a couple things about that. Again, I don't want that one, so I'm going to leave it right there. A couple things about that. It's important that we understand that we're simply making a copy and we're uploading it into the cloud and through our browser, across the internet to the Google server farms into our Sandy.net Google account. So that means because we made a copy, we're not going to be erasing what's on our computer's hard drive. That's important. We always get to keep that. Let's try this folder right here that's got a bunch of folders inside of it and other files. Left click. It says the same thing. All right. I'm going around in circles so you can see where I am. Plus copy. All right. And down below it says drop files to upload them to where? The today's folder, because that's where we are. So that's really important that you understand where you are, because anything that we bring in any way, including a new folder, is going to happen right here, nowhere else. And if we just are practicing with Google Docs, sheets, or slides, and we're just playing with stuff, the copy of whatever we're working with is going to be in the today's folder, and it will always be there unless you move it to somewhere else. So that's important. So the files that I actually want to bring in at this point are located somewhere here, and I can go browse for them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say File Upload. And so now I've got my file browser. You probably recognize this from your computer looking around your Windows environment. And so it happens to be on the desktop that I have in my Zoom training materials. And down here, Google Drive Basics folder, I have a bunch of stuff that I'm interested in. And you remember the Excel workbook that I showed you a little bit ago? That's one of them. So I'm going to click on that because I want to bring it into my today's folder. But I also wanted the famous author Word document. And you'll notice already I've got a problem. It only lets me do one at a time. Well, the keyboard shortcut to deal with that is simply holding down the Control key, CTRL on most keyboards. Bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard is the easiest way to do it. Once you've selected one, you hold down your Control key. Then you can select a second, third, fourth, fifth. And if you accidentally click on too many, that's okay. Still holding down the Control key, you can click on them again and deselect them. But we want to do three right now. We want to do the Excel, Microsoft Word, and the PDF waiver form that we saw before. Those are the three. So now I can let go of the Control key and I simply just go to Open. And where's it all going to end up? Whatever I have open, and it happens to be the Today's folder. So down here it says, hey, we're uploading 3, and it happened so fast it said 3 uploads complete. Now this is important. This is an Excel file. It is not a Google Sheet. This is not a Google Doc. It's a Microsoft Word. And this right here is a PDF. We're all familiar with PDFs. It's an Adobe product. Those items are made by competitors of Google. But it's very nice of Google to allow us to be able to bring it into a Google product and be able to deal with that. And we're going to deal with that here right about now. So here's an Excel training book, and I want to open it and see what it looks like. So watch what happens on our tab right here. So I'm going to go double click, and it opens up there, and it happens very quick, but this is the icon for Google Sheets. And this is the Google Sheets user interface. And these are the drop-down menus for all things Google Sheets. And oh, look, they put something new here. And oftentimes when there's a new something, not always, but often, they will put some kind of a banner or something saying that it's new. Because again, Google's always updating their products. And in this case, we're in Google Sheets. So this is an Excel file still. How do I know that? There's the extension. If I hover over it, it says Microsoft Excel format. But we're in Google Sheets. That's a little bit confusing. So the answer is yes. It's what you're thinking. You can actually change, modify, edit, format, if you will, an Excel spreadsheet in Google Sheets. You can also do a Word file, a Word document in Google Docs. All right, let's just try it real quick. Peanut butter, bold, italicized. Let's make it red. Let's make it a lot bigger. And just for fun, let's change the font to those. Say this one that's kind of fun. Boom. Saving, save to drive. All right, there it is. I have just modified a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet in Google Sheets. Okay. Google themselves doesn't recommend that you do this. Is it available? Can you do it? Yes, it's true. But because they're competitors and it's two entirely different programs, sometimes changes like the ones I made to peanut butter, or worse, like setting up a whole bunch of formulas and functions in your spreadsheet, whatever you were working on, sometimes later, like after lunch or the next day or a week later, things go back to the way they were before you made the changes, or something's not working right. And so what they say to do is that you should, if you want to bring in an Excel file, that's fine, but turn that Excel into 100% a Google Sheet in this case. So we're going to show you how to do that right now. All right, so here's up on the browser tabs. This is where the Google Sheet opened up this Microsoft Excel file. In fact, let's go back to our drive real quick. There it is. That's the one that we just changed. And apparently my computer's going a little bit slow, but if this were functioning properly, I could try this real quick. It would show me a preview. We might even, there we go. Now we see the preview. And it's a little bit old because peanut butter should be red because we did that. So let's talk about that for a second. Why isn't it red? It just kind of updated itself. It just showed us the preview. Sure enough, it's red there, but it's not red here, not yet, but it will be. So remember that every stroke of the keyboard, every click of the mouse at near the speed of light is going back and forth in data packets from our browser, from our computer's browser, all the way to the Google server farms. So sometimes things take a little bit of time to do it. And because we're part of the sandy.net Google domain, we have an extra firewall, maybe even a couple that we have to go through. And so sometimes things take a while to update. How long do they take? A few seconds at times, a couple of minutes. I once in a lab at the IMC shared a Google Doc with the class, and one person got it in a minute or less. A couple of them did, and a couple people got it in more than 20 minutes. Why the difference? The only thing that's ever been told to me is because every file that goes through our system at the district has to be vetted to make sure there's no viruses, and sometimes that system gets backed up a little bit. All right. Well, it's still not red. One more time. Let's just see if it turns red real fast. Nope, not yet, but it will eventually. Even though this tiny on your screen, red should be pretty obvious. Okay, so Google says, hey, yeah, you can make some changes, but we highly recommend you make it 100% a Google Sheet spreadsheet, not keep it half Microsoft essentially and half Google Sheets. So how do we do that? It's really easy, actually. We just go to File, and then down there it says Save as a Google Sheet. And when I click on this, watch what happens with my tabs up above in the browser. It's opening a new one. And so it's saying, guess what? We're doing it. We're working on it. And right here, it just popped up and left. It said saved to drive. And sure enough, it's already red, just like the other one was. Looks exactly the same. And that's great. Let's go back to here. Well, wait a minute. If I just turn this one into a Google Sheet, why is it not? Oh, now it is. It wasn't there a second ago, but now it is. It just takes some time because things are happening over the internet. Sometimes it takes a little while. And so now it's really important to see these little icons here. We know that that's the Microsoft version because there's the X and here's the Google one. And now, look, now it's showing us the peanut butter. So it finally caught up to itself with the red. Well, let's kick it up a notch. These two are totally separate files. Whatever changes I make to one will not be reflected on the other and vice versa. And to prove my point, I'm just going to go here real quick. I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go to Image, and I'm going to say Image Over Cells, and it's going to give me all these choices of where to get it from. I'm going to go on the internet, and since I love horses and I always seem to find good pictures with that, instead of just clicking here to bring it in and then click Insert, remember I said try double clicking on things. Makes things go a little faster. Give it a second, boom, there it is, saving, saving, save to drive. This is an Excel file that in Google Sheets, I've just added this picture. That's great. Did it show up on the other one that we turned into 100% Google Sheet? Nope. They're two separate files. Let's take a look here. Well, Mr. J, where's the horse? Well, remember, it takes a little while. Sometimes we can force it, and it will show up. Other times it'll take a few minutes and we're not really going to bother ourselves with it. But just remember that whatever we do to one, it will not affect the other because they're two separate files. And again, how did we do that? Here's our Excel one. We simply went to File, drop down menu, and said Save as a Google Sheet. It opened it up in a new tab in our browser, and it looks identical. But then, of course, they're two separate files. So if we change one, then it's not going to affect the other one. And so in a few minutes, that horse will show up and we'll be able to see it. How about a Word document? Can we do the same thing with the Word document? Can we explore and make some changes in Google Docs to the Word document? We can. Let's just do it. So watch what happens to my browser up here. I just double click. It's opening up a new one, and very fast it says, hey, we're going to open up this Microsoft Word document in Google Docs. And then, of course, it has this extension to remind us that this is, in fact, a Word document. Again, can we make some changes? You bet. We can change some things, make it bigger, change the font to something more exciting, whatever, even change the color. That's great. We could do all those things, saving, save to drive. It happens very quick. Here is the user interface for all things Google Docs, but this is very much a Microsoft Word document. All right. So what does Google recommend? What do I recommend? Everyone recommends that you do not spend any time working on a Microsoft product in Google because they are competitors, and unfortunately things get lost or things stop working or things change and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So they recommend that we simply go to File and go down to where it says Save as a Google Doc. It opens up a new tab. It looks exactly the same as the other one. Of course, I'd already changed that up there, but you'll notice there's no extension there. In fact, here's the original one, Microsoft Word, and here's the new one that it just opened up. Let's go back and see if we see it here. Nope, not yet. It's not there. It's going to show up in a minute or two. Well, let's just move forward because again, these two are totally separate from one another. I'm going to put my cursor right here. I'm going to go to Insert and I'm going to say, we're going to, where are we going to get it from? Search the web. There it is. And so I'm going to type in horses again. All right. And hit enter. And then just to do it quickly, double click. Let's try that again. Double click. Double clicks only work if you don't move your mouse. There it is. It happened very quickly. Save to drive. So is it on the 100% Google Docs one? Nope. But it is in fact on the other one. Let's go back and see what's going on here. Okay. So now we have both of them, but we still don't see the horse. Okay, well, it's sort of working. So now this is a little bit confusing because we have these two, which at least for now kind of look the same, except for this little icon that we have over in the corner here. Well, let's do this. We're in the Today's folder, and why don't we just right click, new folder, and what are we going to call it? Let's call it Microsoft. All right, that's easy enough. Enter, and where do folders show up? At the top. And we can just right click on it and go to organize, and we'll make it, let's try that again. We'll make it blue because Microsoft's usually blue. That's pretty cool. And then we could take this Microsoft Word one, although I really would like to see the picture of the horse there. Let's see if we can get it. Not yet. It's taking time. We'll see it in just a few minutes. Going to drag and drop that in there and take this Excel workbook and drop it in there. Piece of cake. All right, so that was easy enough just to put the things in Microsoft. Let's go in there real quick and notice our navigation here. Now we're in the Microsoft one. In a few seconds, hopefully it'll show us what it looks like, and maybe those pictures will show up as well. Let's talk about organizing. So we already know that in our drive, we had a Today's folder. We put it in the prime position, simply recognizing our ordering by name in alphanumeric order ascending. So we know where things go. And so it was easy enough to put the Today's folder there. And then we drilled down into it to open it up. And in there, we brought in three different documents, actually a Microsoft Word, a Microsoft Excel file, and also this PDF, which we haven't opened up yet. We'll do that in a second. And then after opening those up, we simply went to File and said Save as a Google Doc, which created a second one. And we realized by virtue of our horse picture there that whatever changes you make to one file will not affect the other one and vice versa, demonstrating that they are in fact very much two different files. And so in our drive, we stuck those in the Microsoft folder just to make a point. And so let's double click on that. And hopefully it'll show us a preview here. Sometimes you can force it. There it is. And there's our horses. Oh, look, I got the same picture. That's wonderful. All right. So let's think about organizing real quick. So I just did this one time. It's easy enough just to have two Microsoft files right here in the Microsoft folder. But if I was doing this a lot, like say with my department, and it was a folder that we were all sharing and we wanted to keep originals around. And by the way, let's talk about that for a moment. Why would we want to keep the originals around? Remember, we got it off of the computer's hard drive and we actually uploaded it to our Drive account. And then we turned them into the Google equivalents, the Google Docs equivalent, the Google Sheets equivalent. So why would we want to keep around the Microsoft one? Well, a couple of reasons. Well, for one, it doesn't cost us anything. It doesn't chip away at our storage as far as us having to buy more storage because we have unlimited with the district. So let's talk about a real reason that we might want to do this. Well, here's why. So over here, you see on the desktop of my computer that I have some files represented with these icons that are actually on the hard drive. And if my hard drive failed, or if this computer failed in any way, well, no problem. Everything in my Google accounts I can get with any other computer anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet connection. But if my hard drive failed or this computer failed, all of these things would be lost. So maybe it's a good idea to have some of these things stored in such a way that they're always accessible. And sure enough, if this is in our, in this case, our Microsoft folder in our today's folder in our sandy.net drive, then guess what? We could either click on this ellipsis to see if we can find, there it is, download, or just right click anywhere. Same thing. And by downloading it, we're taking it out of the cloud. And make no mistake, this is an Excel file, that's Microsoft Word. We're taking those originals that were on my computer originally, and then we can then put it back on the same computer or a different one, in the case that we got a different computer, all by using this tool right here, download. So that's helpful. So why not store some things if you think there's some point where you may want to have it safe for the future. So again, it's taking its time right now showing us those pictures. Kind of sad. Sometimes it does that. Let's see if we can force it. Okay, well, that seemed to help that time. So again, all things Google take time to go back and forth. And pages have to reload and all that. And just because you see it now doesn't mean a minute or three when you go back to click on this folder that you're going to see that. Well, let's do just a little bit more organizing. Because we're inside the Today's folder, and specifically inside the Microsoft folder, if I right click and I say new folder, where's it going to end up? Inside the Microsoft folder. So what kind of folders might we be interested in? How about one that says Excel? That'll work. All right, that's going to show up. And how about one that says Word? That could be helpful. And again, with my example here, I only have 2 files, and I'm not going to get any more. But if this was a folder that we're sharing in our department or with a bunch of colleagues in our office that we're working with, we might have a whole bunch of these. And so it's always a good idea to be thinking about how can I organize things to work a little bit better. Remember, Microsoft Word is typically a blue color, so it'd be easy enough to do that. Excel is what color? Typically green. So easy enough to do that. Boom. That just makes it a little bit easier to find. And so now I can take the Word document and drop it in there. I can take the Excel document and drop it in there. And now things are a little bit cleaner. That'll work. All right. So let's go back to the Today's folder. And the one that we haven't seen yet is the PDF by Adobe. And it works a little bit differently than the other ones. We're still going to be using Google Docs, but we are going to open this up and take a look at it and see what Google does well and what it doesn't do well. And actually, before I do that, just to make a point, I'm going to go back to my drive, and there's my Today's folder. So I can either click on it here and then go to share up here, or I can click this ellipsis and go to share, or I can simply just right click and go to share. And what is it I'm trying to do? I don't want just a link. I actually want to share it. So I'm going to share it, and I'm going to open up this sharing dialog box. And we see a bunch of things in here. Right now, it starts off as restricted, and it shows that I am the owner of this folder, which makes sense because I just created it in my Google Drive. All right, so right now it's restricted. So it says add people, groups, calendar events. So it's as easy as putting in email addresses of those people that you want to share it with. And so if you're sharing with a department, if you've got all of the email addresses of your entire department, for example, somewhere, you can just copy and paste that into here and then give everyone access at the same time. But that's not the only thing you can do. We'll share with you right now. Instead of just being restricted to those that you give specific email addresses for and whatever. That's called restricted. What about anyone in San Diego Unified that has the link? So maybe I put this on our website or something, this link, and if you have a sandy.net email address, and that would include the students, ends with sandy.net, then everyone with that link, when they open it up, then what are we talking about? The today's folder, they would be a viewer. What are the options? Wow. We could make everyone with that link, everyone in the district with a sandy.net email address, students and adults, we could make them all editors. What's an editor? That means that they could add stuff to the folder, take things out, they could change the names of things, do all kinds of stuff. So that doesn't make sense that we would do it with everyone in the district that has access to that link. So viewer makes more sense. But that's interesting that you have all of those different choices. So look at this. What other options are there? Anyone on the internet. So if your department is working with parents that have, like Yahoo accounts or Gmail or something like that, maybe somebody still has an AOL account somewhere, and they don't have a sandy.net one, then you're going to definitely want to make sure this last one is selected. Anyone with the link. Otherwise, every time someone outside of the district tries to access anything, whether it's a folder or a file, you're going to get a prompt that says, this person is asking for permission. And trust me, that gets old very quickly. So interestingly, anyone in the whole wide world with this link, um, and again, you could put this on a web page, you could broadcast this anywhere, send out an email to everybody in the district, and all the parents on the list or something, and anyone with the link could have access to that as a viewer, or you could actually make them editors. Now, I don't see how that would work very effectively, but at least the option's there. So that's pretty cool. For right now, though, we're going to go back to simply restricted. And can you restrict just a few email addresses to being editors and then everybody else just has the link they could be viewers? Yep. You can set up each individually separately. You can have one person an editor, the next person a viewer, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and add some people here. And by typing in a T, some of the last people that I work with are going to show up here. And oh, look, we have at least 3 of the Fab Four. These are for the purpose of training and obviously are not real accounts. But someone in the district a month or two ago found Paul McCartney and decided that he did not exist in the San Diego Unified System, and so they erased him. That's unfortunate. One day, hopefully, I'll get him back. So it's the Fab Four, not the Fab Three. But let's say I want to add trainer T1 John Lemon. That's great. By default, he's going to be an editor. If I want to change it to something else, I can. We're going to leave it as editor for right now. If I click here again, it's just showing the last people that I work with. Let's go ahead and get George Harrison in there. Click again. Let's go ahead and get Ringo Starr as well. And again, I'm going to make them all editors. And I'm going to go ahead and just click send. But before I do, just know that you have a settings button here. Anytime you see a settings button, it's always a good idea to see what's there, what options we have. And again, if I want to just type out a message to indicate to these people when they get their notification what it is I'm sending them and why, we could do that there. Or I could just include the link in an email, explain it, in just a regular email. But here's the settings. So if this is selected, there's a check in the checkbox. It's saying editors can change permissions and share. So what is it I'm sharing again? It's the today's folder and everything inside. Know this, that any permissions I give to the today's folder, whether it's an editor or just a viewer or something in between, those permissions cascade downward or inward. And so they will be the same permissions with everything inside of this. And if this is selected, it means that they can share it with other people. So John, if he has the email address for Paul, he could share it with him, with or without my permission, because I already gave him tacit approval by making him an editor. Or if I don't want the editors to be able to do that, be thinking about your department or the group that you work with, then just deselect that. And how did I get to that? Just by clicking that up there. And by the way, what's available in this settings icon changed just a few weeks ago, and it changed about a year before that. So always click on things just to see what's new and what's happening, because you'll be surprised when things change. And remember, the very smart men and women Google engineers are changing those things 99 times out of 100 to make it better for us so that we, the consumer, are happier with the product. Although sometimes it is frustrating when we're not sure why they're making changes, or something just looks different or works differently than it did before. All right, so to make all this happen, all I have to do now is click send. And when I do that, it takes a couple seconds. It says access updated down here, which is interesting. I'm not sure why it didn't show up here. Last time it showed up on the top. Why is it down there? I'm not sure. Maybe Google changed that. Maybe I'm just misremembering. Either way, it doesn't matter. Things will change all of the time. So that was the today's folder. And now we notice that we have this little icon here of a person. It's kind of like the shoulders and head of a person in the today's folder, which means that the today's folder is shared. Does it mean it's shared with only one person or more than one? Doesn't mean anything. It just means it's shared. So if I double click on this now, we see we're going in deep. It's showing us also that it's shared. And then look at this. Our Microsoft folder is showing us that it's shared. Let's double click on Microsoft and look, both of those are shared. In fact, if we click on this one and we say share, let's see who it's shared with. Oh yeah, I said that whoever you share it with, in this case, the today's folder, everything inside is going to be shared as well, with the exact same permissions that you shared the today's folder. The Microsoft folder, and in this case, the Excel folder, are going to have the same permissions. But watch this. Let's say Ringo Starr's been misbehaving with the Excel folder, and we don't want Ringo in there anymore. What options do we have? Okay, Ringo no longer has access. So now Google's given us this new window that showed up just a couple of weeks ago. Let's take the time to read it. It says remove from parent folder. What's the parent folder? The today's folder. Where are we? We're in the Excel folder. We just tried to remove Ringo. So it says trainer T4 Ringo Starr has access to Excel via a parent folder, today's folder. Removing access from the parent folder will make permissions easier to manage. Okay, that's interesting. So now it's given us all these different choices here. So we have to think, we want to remove the item? Actually, we do, or remove from the parent. Let's try this one and see how that works. Okay, so just from Excel, he's been removed. So that was almost a little bit confusing. And again, Google tries to give us so many choices and so many options that sometimes it is confusing, especially when those options are changing all the time. So it behooves all of us to just take a little bit of time, slow down, and read what it is they're doing. And then we'll kind of see that, hey, it's giving us more options. So let's go back to Drive. Let's get out of here. Oh, I forgot pending changes, very important. Save. Make sure I save that. And so then I'm going to go back to Drive. And the today's folder is shared. I'm just going to click here and go down to share. And as we will see, Ringo Starr is there. He's still an editor. Okay, well, that makes sense. Let's click away from that. Let's drill down in today's folder. So what about Microsoft? We didn't change that. We just changed the Excel one. So let's right click on that and go to share. And so Ringo's still in there as an editor. That makes sense. Let's click away from that to go down. And so Word, right click, share. We didn't change that one. So Ringo's still there. But if we go into Excel, right click, share, this is the one where he should be gone. And in fact, he is gone. So again, we got rid of just that one. So what we're showing here is folders that are inside of other folders. All those permissions cascade inward or down the line, as it were, including files that are in there. But we can go back and change individual folders or files any way we want to. So just for Excel, we're going to go ahead and say, George is no longer an editor. We're just going to make him a viewer. And we get the same message here. So we're just going to, just for fun, let's try this one. Update parent. That should work by changing George Harrison to a viewer for everything in the today's folder, inside the folders inside those, and all the files as well. pending changes. Let's say save. And again, that little dialog box that we just read showed up in the last few weeks. It didn't exist 6 months ago or a year ago. It's brand new. They're always creating new stuff, trying to make it better for us. So now let's go to my drive to the today's folder. Let's check share and see what it looks like. So Ringo's still an editor, but George Harrison's a viewer. Yep. All right. And we will assume that it did exactly the same. Let's go ahead and we've been looking at folders. Let's take a look at this file here. Boom. Share. All righty. There it is. So wherever you make the changes, everything inside of it is going to have the same permissions unless you go inside, in this case, the today's folder, and you change like the Excel folder that we did. Or in this case, I just was about to change this one right here. Just this particular file, I could make a change there just for that one. We could do that. And what's interesting is it allowed us from the Excel folder to be able to change the permissions of the today's folder as in respects to George Harrison. Again, just a few weeks ago, that wasn't an option. So it saved us a step if that's what our intention was. So that's kind of cool. Thank you, Google, for making that just a little bit better. All right, that's kind of fun. Let's go back to the today's folder. And now let's take a look at the waiver form. And I did this in this order because when we go into this PDF, we're going to at some point turn it into a Google Doc. And when we do, you'll have to wonder what the permissions are going to be like for that Google Doc that right now doesn't exist, but it's happening inside the today's folder. So let's take a look. So the first thing is, here's the tab we're in. And we're just going to double click on the PDF, which again works differently than Word and Excel. So double click. You notice a new tab hasn't opened up. All right. But we still see a preview. Well, that's pretty cool. So where are we? It's hard to see, but I can still see the new button, home, activity, all the other stuff. And it's part of my drive. I can see it back there. In fact, right here, the tab shows us we're still in drive, but we can see a preview. And then there's a button here that says, hey, want to open this up with Google Docs? Okay, so it's a little bit different than opening up a Word document. Let's just see what this does real quick. Okay, so we're in our drive. So when we open up a preview of the PDF, it just keeps us in our drive and just shows it to us what it looks like as a PDF. And it gives us the option to open it up as a Google Doc. So we already saw this before, statement of non-participation. It's just a half a page. It's got a table, some check boxes, a couple of check boxes up here. It's got some bold here. These two paragraphs are kind of centered in the middle. Employee signature with a line and a date. And just up here, this is worth mentioning. It says name, last, first, middle initial, something that you would see somewhere around the district in a PDF. And why do they have this available in the district? Well, presumably, if you're trying to change your benefits or something, you would print this out. You would then mark this up with a pen, and then you would scan it in your printer and send it back to the benefits department, and some change would be affected once they process it. Well, that's cool. I would not recommend turning this into a Google Doc for that purpose, and you'll see why in a minute, because the formatting is going to kind of go sideways and haywire as far as tables and checkboxes and lines are concerned. Having said that, all the words will be there. So let's take a look. If we open up with a Google Doc, first of all, we're going to see a Google Doc open up. Let's see what changes happen. So it's now opening up a Google Doc. And look, there's no extension. This is not a PDF. It's not an Adobe product at this point. All right. Here is a sample of it, just because we clicked on it in preview, but it's in our drive to see it. So there's the table, there's the boxes, there's the two lines. Let's see what it did. There's the table, but you'll notice it squished last, first, middle together. Over here where certificate and classified was, there were check boxes there to presumably check if you're a teacher or if you're a classified employee. And then there were check boxes down in front of these. This little paragraph here was was bold before, and these are centered properly. Remember, optical character recognition, that's the software that's doing this. Characters like letters and numbers works perfectly, and it's got 100%, same font, same everything. The formatting goes sideways a little bit when you're dealing with things like checkboxes and tables. And I will tell you that it's gotten better. A couple of years ago, when I started doing this very example, a table wouldn't even show up. All of the letters and words and everything that's inside this table were just lined up down the left margin. There was no table at all. And so it took a couple of pages. And now it's kicked it to a second half page. And remember where it said employee signature and date with those lines? The lines have disappeared, and now it's onto another page. So this is not a good, we don't want to spend 20 minutes trying to, oh, okay, well, we'll go back right here and try and, make this so it lines up and put the check boxes and last and then first got to move over and middle initial. We don't want to do that for this because it's easier just to print it out, write it in by hand, and then scan it in your work printer and send it off to the benefits department. But why would we want to do something like this? Well, if this was another school or in our district and we wanted to use some of the ideas of something that they produce for our own school, and assuming we have permission for that, then we could take a PDF that they have and now we could make it our own. Instead of saying Lafayette, we could change it to Sequoia, for example, two schools that I went to a very, very long time ago. And so we at least have the benefit of the words, the fonts, and some of the formatting generally of whatever that PDF had. We now have access to it. And I promise you, if it's something as simple as this, quotes from famous author document that's 4 pages long with the different authors, if this were a PDF, it would absolutely turn it into a perfect Google Docs version of that because there are no tables, there are no checkboxes or lines where the signatures were down at the bottom. So just know that that's available to you, and there you go. So let's go back to our drive. Let's get out of the preview mode. And so look, here's our original PDF, and there's the new Google Docs version of it. So now we're probably thinking, okay, well, I have two things named the same. Well, we could do the same thing, just very quick. Right click, new folder. This is Adobe. And by the way, Adobe comes in the alphabet before Microsoft. So where's the folder going to show up? Right there in the front. And Adobe's typically red, so just very quickly, boom, we're done. Take the waiver form, stick it in there. And now change, here we go. It's a new box here. Let's see what it says. This item will be visible to everyone who can see Adobe. That's the folder. Oh, and look, it's already got the share thing. I was going a little too quick. So I'm going to go ahead and say move. But basically it's saying, hey, this Adobe folder is already shared with everyone in the today's folder. Do you want the same permissions? And the answer is yes. So let's look at those. Remember, that folder didn't exist just a minute ago. And what's inside of it didn't exist before. Actually, the PDF did. I take that back. So let's go back to the Adobe one. And let's go to share. And there it is. Ringo's an editor, George Harrison's a viewer. And again, if we want to take Ringo away from access of just the Adobe, we can remove access. It's going to say, hey, do you want to go all the way back to the parent one, which is the today's folder, or just that one folder? We'll just say remove that item. Pending changes, say save. And now that's no longer shared with Ringo. So if we go back, we will see that it's just George Harrison and John Lennon, and I'm the owner of it. All right, that's pretty cool. So that's kind of the gist of organizing folders and files and share permissions. Again, whatever the share permission is for the parent folder, in this case, the today's folder, everything that you create or put, even if you're dragging something in fact, I'll just do this. Let's drag in this practice demo right here. Boom. Where's it going to land? Today's folder. And as soon as it shows up, there it is. I can go to share and say, show us what's going on. And Ringo's an editor, George is a viewer, trainer John is an editor, so on and so forth, because that's what the parent folder permissions are, and everything inside is going to be the same. Of course, that's an Excel file, so I'll stick it in Microsoft, and we're just going to move it anyway, keep the same permissions. It keeps asking us because it wants to make sure that we're aware that things are different. So let's double click on Microsoft. And remember, we changed some things in Excel once, so let's see what it does there. Change was access. This item will be visible to everyone who can see Excel. Everyone who can see Microsoft will lose access to this item unless this item is shared directly with them. Okay. And if we're not sure, we can go in, check the share, and see what the permissions are. There it is. So in this particular one, we just don't have Ringo. And if I wanted to add Ringo to this for some reason, guess what? Boom, editor, done. Now Ringo is now part of that share. So just that quickly, we can change folders and or in this case, files inside folders. We can use the navigation bar up here to navigate back and forth. We can go to Drive by clicking here. We can just click over there to go back to Drive. And then there's our today's folder. That's where we shared by either hitting that and clicking on share down below or just right clicking and doing it. Or by selecting any of these one time, a single click, we get this little menu that opens up here. And we can see share, download, there's move, trash, and then a few other ones. Well, where else do we see that? The ellipsis drop down, we see some options there, or right clicking, we see some options there. So they keep moving things around and trying to make it easier for us. And again, they don't have suggested up here anymore, but look what they do have. Type, people, modify. Are we looking for something? Documents. Let's see what happens if we click documents. Okay, so we still have our folders here. We still have all these things down here. So it hasn't really filtered anything for us yet, has it? So people, is it someone in particular that owns this? What is it? So this is a new feature that they've just put up here in the last little short while. And it's going to take some time for you to kind of look at it and figure out how it works best for you. So we'll get back to this when we get to search and home and all of this, but let's just kind of go through some of these other features over here real quick. So let's go to storage real quick. So here's all of the files that I have in order of the largest, 1.3 gigabyte, 1.2, 1.06. And so I can scroll down and I can see what makes up this 27.78 gigabytes of storage. And just to be clear, a Google Doc doesn't take up any storage. A Google Form or Google Sheet doesn't take up any storage. But anything that's not Google, like a Microsoft or Adobe, or in this case, an MP4, which is a movie, or I guess if you had some MP3 files in here, which is music, then that would take up storage. But again, it doesn't really matter because we have unlimited. So if we want to look through and try and find, certain things that are being stored here, we could do that. Or click on this one and say, when was it last modified? We could come up with all these different things. So this is kind of slick. They've just made it a little bit easier to kind of sort through storage because as you can see, this elevator car here keeps getting smaller as I go down, and there's a gazillion things in here because it makes up every folder and file that I have stored inside my storage. So that's kind of neat. Can you change the order? Yeah, you can reverse the sort direction if for some reason you want to see the stuff that takes up the least amount. I had the MP4s at the top because they take up the most, but those are some options that you have right there. And you notice that this is in list mode. Well, it's always in list mode. You'll notice up here, like we have in Drive, we don't have the choice to switch from grid layout to list layout because that's just the way storage is. Let's go to trash real quick. Okay, we see the same thing if we're trying to, identify stuff that's in here. We could decide we're just looking for a document or a Google form or a PDF or something else. And then we have those same modified things here. Well, back in 2019, in October, prior to that, Google would let you store 10,000 things in your trash. And most of us, including myself, just kept all of our extra files in trash. So if by some reason we needed something that I had thrown away 6 months ago, by golly, I could go find it if I went and searched for it in my trash. Well, you could imagine if I had 10,000 things in there, everybody in the district would make up probably millions of things. And if everybody in the world, it was a lot. So Google started putting a banner about 3 months before they changed the policy. So they changed the policy in October, I believe it was October 15th of 2019. And why do I remember that? Only because the banner in trash was up here. Actually, it was in Drive. There was a big banner that says, by the way, coming up in a month or two, the trash rules are going to change. And what was the trash rule? This right here. All items in trash will be deleted forever after 30 days. And so if we look in here, here's from last week, at today's folder from a different class. Here's earlier this month. And here's last month, and so on and so forth. If you look in your trash and you see something that's like 6 months old or a year old, wait, what's going on? Because it says up here, things in the trash should be deleted after 30 days. Well, let's talk about that real quick. We go back to Drive. So I have, let's see, I'll find one here. My Canvas folder was shared with me, okay, or let's see, class certificates was shared with me from someone else or whatever, and I had it in the shared with me thing, and I made like a shortcut to it right here or something like that. If I throw something like that away in my drive, and if someone else shared it with me, it's not throwing away what's in their drive. So in that example, if there's a file or a folder owned by someone else and we happen to throw it away, so it ends up in the trash, as long as that other person doesn't throw theirs away, it'll still be in your trash months from now. That's just one of those weird little kind of workaround, little nuance of the rules or whatever. And so then if it is in there and you see it months later, or anything that's in here, for example, that you throw away, you can just hit the ellipsis and say restore. That brings it back to wherever it was in your drive. Or you can just delete it forever. Yep, delete forever. Now that's gone. Okay, let's go back to Drive and let's just find something like this file right here, whatever it is. If I name things with a bunch of question marks, that just means I'm testing something out. So I'm just going to right click on this. I'm going to say move to trash. Are you sure? After 30 days it'll be gone? You bet. Move it to trash. I go down to trash and there it is. Oh, wait, that wasn't something I wanted to throw away. And it hasn't been 30 days. I own it, so it hasn't been 30 days. I could either click right there, or I could just right click on it. Restore. And where's it going to go? Right back where it was, wherever it was before, right back up to the front. And that just happens to be a list of a bunch of email addresses of individuals that have been to classes or something that I had. I just happened to be playing with that worksheet. And so I just named it a bunch of question marks so that I knew that it was just for practicing and that I could throw it out if I wanted to. All right, so that's trash. Let's go to spam real quick. Spam is something new. It says files in spam won't appear anywhere else in Drive. Files are permanently removed after 30 days. So kind of like the trash. So what goes in here? It says your spam is empty. Okay. So if somebody shares something with me, and we're going to go there in just a second, but let's say they share the same document with you 25 times. Google's going to call that spam, and it's going to end up in your spam folder. And whether you go to look at it within 30 days or not, it's going to disappear according to the banner right here after 30 days. So I've never received spam apparently because nothing's ever automatically gone in here. But this is a new feature from Google. And I kind of like the idea because whereas in our district, we don't seem to be having a problem with other staff members spamming us or sending the same document or folder out to a bunch of people multiple times. But if they did, it would end up here. And as that banner says, it doesn't show up anywhere else. So we don't have to be looking at people's spam. It'll just show up in the spam folder. That's a new feature, just like a month or so ago. Pretty cool. Thank you, Google. I kind of like that. And so we're just going to jump up here to activity real quick. Look at this. This is new as of the last month or two. You are all caught up. Files with recent comments or requests that need your attention will appear here. So if you've played with Google Docs at all or with like Google Sheets, you can make comments on shared documents or shared sheets. You can say, hey, that looks really good. Or, hey, in the section that you're working on, don't forget to do X, Y, and Z as you're collaborating and working back and forth. Or maybe it's a Google form you're collaborating on. But if someone has sent you a message or made a comment on something, you want to be able to see that. So Google finally created a spot where that happens, and it's called activity. So again, just 5, 6 weeks ago, that activity button didn't exist and it just showed up. That's pretty cool. So the idea is that if someone's making comments for you or whatever, you want to be able to see that. It's going to be in the activity thing and you can go find it. That's pretty cool. So then there's spam that automatically gets stuff in it. And after 30 days, it goes away. That's pretty cool. Activity, things automatically show up there. Let's just real quick look at workspaces. I know I'm jumping around a bit. We'll get to the other ones. That's okay. So because this is fairly new, I haven't created any new workspaces, but I have another reason why I haven't done it either. And I'm going to explain it to you right now. So let's look at what the options are. Create workspace. Okay. Using one of 8 workspaces, hide workspaces to make room for more. Using one of 8 workspaces. So it's telling us something about how this workspaces work, and it's something to do with like 8 workspaces. And so this says test workspace. There's a more action here. Rename, hide workspace, remove workspace. Okay. Instructional technology. This is looks like my calendar. Okay. And it says I edited it today. This is kind of like a suggestions thing that we had before, where in Drive it would say suggested something you worked on recently or whatever. And it has the more buttons too. Oh, look, there's a whole bunch of stuff here because that's actually a file that I work with. In fact, I could probably find it right up here. I believe it's this one that I shared with you earlier. That's what that is. So let's go back to Drive. And it's saying, do you want to make that a workspace? Okay. It's making suggestions. And here's the school psychologist department that I work with and their trainings on a particular spreadsheet. And so maybe it's saying that I can make a workspace out of that. I'm not really sure how to use the well, look at that. I clicked there. And so now I've got this like this path right there. Let's see if I click on the other one. Okay, sure enough. So since the psychology department for the district shared this particular um, uh, Google Sheets workbook with me, that's where it is. And it's showing me the path. If I click here, that's kind of cool. So this is all new. This has all happened in the last little bit, but this is called workspaces. And so if we're not sure about why something is working the way it is or how it works, how do we get to those Google support pages that I talked about? So just going back and what was it called again? Workspace. Workspaces. Okay, fair enough. So we're going to type in Google work spaces, and hopefully I type it correctly. Okay, so I'll say enter. And so workspace, official site, flexible feature and pricing, all this stuff. Okay, that sounds like something totally different. So let's go ahead and just do a little bit different. Google Workspaces in Drive. Maybe that's something different. Remember, there's a gazillion things out there. Oh boy, it's taking us all over the places. Well, Google, you're supposed to make this easier for us. Okay, it's got some promising things over here. This is sponsored. That just means it's an advertisement. But then Google has stuff here, and apparently they're trying to sell us stuff. So that's interesting that our Google administrator would allow this to show up in our Google Drive if it's something we have to pay for. But let's take a look. What are Google Workspaces in Drive? Okay, that sounds promising. This is a little more button. Okay, it's in Workspace. Usually it'll say Google support pages, but this is something different. So again, Google's changing stuff all the time. Let's go ahead and just click on that and see what it looks like. All right, pretty much an advertisement. That's not the Google support pages. I'm going to show you Google support pages. So what I'm going to say is how to share, let's try that again. Share a folder in Drive. All right, that's pretty simple. Now this should take us straight to the Google support pages. There it is, Google Help, share folders in Google Drive. So I'm going to click on that. And so now we see we're in the Google support pages. This is where everything in Drive has resided since I ever started using it. But now apparently Workspaces has its own spot because they're trying to sell you something. So that is another reason why I don't like those Workspaces, but we'll talk more about that in a second. So did it just advertise a workspace right here? Want advanced Google Workspace features for your business? Wow. I have gone to the Google support pages and it's still trying to sell me something. That's really interesting. But anyway, here's all the stuff. Share with specific people. There's the step-by-step instructions in Drive. Again, Google support pages. And so all of the resources we need to be able to do all of the things, whatever it is we're doing in Drive, in this case, sharing folders and files and stuff, is all right there in the Google support pages. And how did we do that? We simply went to Google and we typed in what we wanted. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, we typed in workspaces and it kept trying to sell us stuff. So clearly, this is geared towards enterprise or business stuff, and maybe that's why it's in here. In fact, I'm going to go back to my Yahoo version of this, and you notice workspaces is not there. So that is something that I'm guessing now, because we're part of the school district, an enterprise, that they have added this to it. In fact, I would suggest to the Sandy.net Google administrator not to include things that are going to possibly cost us money. But regardless of all of that, whether it costs us money or not, workspaces. This is another place to organize your stuff. Let's go back to Drive. So here's all my folders. Alphanumeric ordering, ascending. It's the way I like it because it's easy to find things. If I create something that starts with a Z, it's here. If I want something to be in the prime position, I just put a bunch of dots in front of it. Numbers come before letters, and all my files the same. And so if I have something for my Google classes, where is it going to go? In the Google classes. If I'm working on my lesson plans, where's my lesson plans going to go? Somewhere in this folder. I'm making certificates for people to take the class, whatever. I organize this according to the way that makes the most sense for me. Just like if you bought a filing cabinet at home and you had folders that you put your electric bill and your phone bills in and all that stuff, you're going to file stuff the way that makes sense for you. That's what we get to do with Drive. That's pretty cool. But then they've added these other things here. Workspaces is just another way to display your stuff, maybe different way folders. That's kind of what home is. I'm going to show you this real quick. I'm going to click on it. And again, home didn't exist 4 or 5 weeks ago. Before that, it was priority for over a year or two. I didn't like priority either, and I'll explain why in a second. But they got rid of priority and replaced it with home. All right. And let's take a look at home real quick. So suggested. Now we're back to suggested, but not just 4 or 5. Look at how many suggested there are. This is a doc. That's a Google slide. Here's an Excel one. In fact, the practice demo one, that's the one that I modified earlier today. Okay, here's the stuff I've been working on today and from a couple more days. And I can say, show me more files. But these are just files. So suggested, can I switch to folders then? I can. Remember how many folders I have? Now it's only showing me about half of them. And if I want to see more folders, I can. This is home. People. Who am I looking for? Their stuff or whatever. This is a lot like search, and we're going to see that in just a minute. So home is this crazy way to kind of show you all of these different things. And if I'm looking for something, this would make me crazy. Why? Because I've spent time over the years culling and trimming all of my folders and files into a way that makes sense for me so that I understand what I'm looking at. And to have something totally different like this is very confusing. And guess what? About 4 or 5 weeks ago, you may have noticed this with you if you've been going to Drive lately. All of a sudden, I went to go into my Drive expecting to see this. And when I opened it up in my Sandy.net Google domain Drive associated with my Sandy.net email address, this is what I saw on my screen. And I went, wait, what? What is that? And then I saw this over here and I thought, what the heck is going on? So I immediately went over here to settings and I said, okay, what's going on? Settings. And look what I noticed. It was the start page. When you open up Drive, it was selected on home. I didn't do that. Google did. They were trying to sell me home, I guess, or trying to sell me on the idea, I suppose, even though it doesn't cost me any money. And I immediately said, nope, I want my Drive, put it back. But without telling me, they automatically put it on this home thing. And so let's get out of settings real quick. And this is what I saw, which made me absolutely bonkers. And when I saw files, I thought, well, that's all I see. Show me more. And the next thing I know, now I've got just a gazillion things out here. And now I can go by type and people and modified and location and to do and all of these different things going on. And I'm thinking, this to me is a terrible way to organize anything. It doesn't actually make sense. And if I'm searching for something, why not just use the search? We're going to see in a few seconds how well that works. So home, in my opinion, is probably going to disappear. Will it be a year or two like priority? Maybe. It might disappear in a few weeks. Google does that. And they usually follow recommendations of people and then they try something new and then sometimes they just switch it back. So remember, all things Google at any time, they can change your user interface, they can change the features, they can take features away, all of those things. And it can be very frustrating at times. Thank goodness we can go to the setting tab and in settings, I could then go and change this back. And then look at this, show workspaces. Maybe I don't want that to be there. If I deselect that, then I'm assuming that this one right here is going to disappear because Google put it there for me. And that's what all of the new Drive users are seeing. I'm going to keep that there for right now, just so it looks the same as those that are trying to sell for the first time. There's a few other things here. Density. This is if you're using a laptop with a touch screen. If the icons are really tiny, you can change how far apart those icons are so your touch screen works a little bit better. Uploads. You saw that we took a we took a Microsoft Excel workbook and we put it in Google Sheets. We chose to convert it to the Google format. That's what this is saying. We also did that with the Google Docs from a Microsoft Word. We also did that with an Adobe PDF. We chose when to change that and all that. If this one is selected, and some people do that, whenever you upload one of those Excel, Word, or Adobe files to your drive, it will automatically convert it to the Google counterpart. Maybe you prefer that. I prefer to have the original available if I want, and so I prefer to do it on my own. It's only a couple of clicks away, piece of cake. Offline, we're not going to discuss this today. There's just a few other things that are here in the general section of settings. Notifications. Do you want to get emails? Or you just want things to show up on your screen? And then, of course, all the different apps that you can have. There's just a whole bunch that you can add to anything Google. That's the general part of settings. So we've gone through these things here. This drive is the same as this one, but it's a little bit different. We'll share that with you in a second. We've gone through all of these. Starred, what is that? That's just Google's version of favorites. I guess Microsoft owns favorites, so they had to call it starred. So again, I've got my folders in alphanumeric order at the top. There's a punctuation mark there, so that goes first. Just because R would have shown up way over here and I wanted it in front, so I put a dot there to do it. And then we have some files here. We see some numbers and then a letter. So that's pretty cool. So if I go back to Drive, all I have to do to my today's folder, right click, and let's go to organize and say add to start. So now, rather than looking for a folder inside of a folder inside of a folder somewhere, I can just go to the favorites or starred, and there's my today's folder and access it that way. So this is just another way of organizing stuff, like a layer on top of organization to make things a little bit easier. So that's helpful. Recent is exactly what it sounds like. Here's all the things today that we have looked at. If we're trying to find something we were working on, this is actually that slide deck. And since I'm here, just going to double click on it real quick, open it up, and just show you that down here where it talks about our class today, you'll see that I did a deep dive Google Drive strategy slide deck. And if I click on it, it will open it up and just know that I've got a link to the YouTube channel. I have how to share a folder, training video. Also have a whole playlist called Tips and Tricks for Google Drive. That's on my YouTube channel. It's all available there. And strategy number 5 down here is the video. Once we get it edited, I will put that in the slide deck and it will be part of it. And of course, what's the number 1 strategy? It's organize the folders and subfolders and files in a way that makes sense to you. It doesn't matter to anyone else. Color them in a way that makes sense to you. Put a certain folder inside another folder in a way that makes sense to you. And then the second one here is, I guess they want you to fill out this reflection about whatever it is. I think this is so they can figure out who went to the class, I guess, by filling this out, then they know you went to the class or something. And then some employment opportunities. They asked us to include this somewhere for you. And so I did that on that particular page right there. So that was in recent, so I could find it. Now it's gone all the way up to the prime position because I just opened that. And so if we're looking for something, that's helpful. We can just kind of click around and find something. And again, if we're trying to find something specific, there it is. We haven't even done search yet, but this new feature that they put down here, maybe it's by a certain somebody, okay? Maybe it's by Diana, who's in charge of all of the school psychologists or whatever. So maybe I'm looking for something from her. If I click on her, then it's only going to show the stuff from the school psychologist department. That's pretty cool. So again, that's almost like a search thing, except for it's not in search. Search a couple years ago was beefed up, and now they've just created this whole recent thing here, and that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and go to search real quick. And so let's just go back to Drive just so we get out of that one window. All right, we're in Drive. If we want to search for something, we can just type in the name of something. It's given us some examples of people that I've worked with. There's my boss. There's someone that I've worked with. Someone who came to a class the other day. My pretend trainers. Sorry, Paul, you're not in there. And then here's categories, documents, spreadsheets, whatever. So already it's given me some filters, if you will, to try and find something, or I can just type in the name of it. It'll make other suggestions. This button here and this button here are the exact same thing, advanced search. And look what it is. So here's the same thing we saw before. Is it a PDF, a document, spreadsheet, or whatever? There's all of these different ones. That's in the type of file that we're looking for. Who's the owner? Is it me? Is it someone else? Is it a specific person? Okay. If you remember some of the words from it, you know, what the name of it is, if you know where it's at, somewhere in specific or whatever. So you have all of these parameters to make your search easier. And again, none of this existed 2 years ago. So about a year and a half ago or so, they created or beefed up the search, and it was fantastic. And now they've added to it by including these little kind of search things, if you will. They just sort of show up in every folder we're at. So if we're in recent, there it is. If we're in trash, there's something similar. So that's pretty cool. All right. Real quick before we get to the shared with me, shared drive. Because I'm a trainer, we have in our training department folders and files that we share. And so we're given our own drive. Kind of like my drive, that's a shared drive with my other trainers. That's different than shared with me, okay? This is something, all these folders and all these files were shared by someone else to me. It could have been Diana, it could have been my boss, it could have been another colleague. It could have been my own self from my Yahoo account. If I shared something, it would show up here. So if someone says they've shared something with you, it's going to show up here. All right. About this. It used to be long ago, years ago, that if someone shared something with you, you could take it out of here and put it in your drive. You notice here's your drive. Those are all the folders that I have. All right. And I shared this one with a couple people or whatever. But the shared with me folder, if you will, is just what people have shared with you. Maybe they're from your department, maybe they're from outside of it. And how much stuff is in there? Whatever's been shared with you. And even if you're brand new, you might have thousands of things in here. So it gets a little bit confusing. What it used to be, we could take stuff out of shared with me, like this folder here, and put it in our drive. They stopped doing that about 3 years ago. So now they don't allow you to move this out. Instead, what do they allow you to do? They allow you to add a shortcut to Drive. or something. And so that way it still resides. This practice folder will still reside here and shared with me, but you'll see it in your drive. So that's an important distinction right there. But what about if I've been using this for years and years and years? What if I already moved something out of shared with me and I put it in my drive? What happens then? Well, something that's older, um, let's see if we can find something real quick. That's not it. Do, 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 do. See, it won't allow me to move it because that's newer. So let's see if I can find something 2020 that might be old enough. See, I had something here and I don't see it in front of me. I'm not sure where it went. Um, let's see, organized. That move is grayed out as well. So how about this one right here, I believe is old enough. So if I go down to organize with this one, you'll notice it's not grayed out because that folder is old enough that it is grandfathered in. In other words, I received that folder from someone else and I then took it out of the shared with me folder and I put it in my drive. And so it's still inside of a folder somewhere in my drive. And so I can still move this. But if it's something newer, like this one, and I try to organize it and move it, there is no option to move it. It's grayed out. So that's one of those subtle rules that you just have to kind of glean, if you will, over time. And so when they changed this, they really didn't announce anything. They just suddenly stopped allowing you to move stuff. And if stuff was older than that policy, then yes, you were still allowed to move it. So that's interesting. So here's where everything resides that's ever been shared with you. And you can simply make a shortcut somewhere in your drive so you can get to it. Um, and that's good because that way you don't lose track of it. Because what was happening is people would take it out of share with me, put it somewhere in one of those countless folders inside folders inside folders, and then they would go back to the person that shared it with them and said, "Hey, where's that thing you share with me? We'll go look in your share with me." Well, it's not there. And they'd have to share it again because they'd already taken it out. So now it will always stay there. So that's interesting. And it's important to understand how all of that works. All right, so we've kind of gone through all of these. What we haven't done is right here, looked at this. So this drive is the same as clicking this drive up here. We can see our today's folder there. And remember Google Classes, we went into it and we looked at the pathway and then we went to 2019, 2020. And you notice every time I click on something, the screen changes. And so sometimes it's like sensory overload. We're going into all these folders inside folders inside folders, and pretty soon we've forgotten where we've gone. Now we have to go see the ellipsis, and oh my gosh, I can't remember what I was even looking for because I've seen so many new things. My brain is kind of overloaded. So wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to be able to explore through Drive without this little desktop area changing every time you click on something? There is, and it's called the Drive file tree, and it's right here. So when I click that expansion button, now we see all of the folders. Today's folder, followed by winter, followed by lesson plans. They're all right here. And there's the Google Classes one. All right. And it goes all the way down to the ones that start with a Z. And then there's my shared drive and shared with me and all those other ones we were looking at. Okay. Well, remember, if we want to, we can go to Google Classes and click on it, and boom, now we're in Google Classes. It changed. Let's go back to Drive. Just so we're looking at this, we're not going to change it this time. We're going to hit the More button or Expand button, and then we're going to hit the, let's scroll up a little bit, the Expand button for Google Classes. And then remember, we went in 2019, and then we went into, oh, we can't quite see it all. Well, whenever you have a window here and a window here, if you get right between them, usually you could do this in a Windows environment. Okay, that makes it a little bit easier. So remember, in Drive, we went into Google Classes, drilled down into 2019, 2020, and then we drilled down into February 13th. So let's click and see what that is. And notice as I'm doing this, nothing's changed over here. That's helpful. All right. And then this is maybe where we were looking. So I can click on that now. And now it switches to that. And we can see the pathway is the same to get there. So the drive file tree just makes it a little bit easier. And that's pretty cool. And so you can leave it like that. And when you open it back up, it's going to be the same way it was before and the width as well, unless what? You reset it. Every time you hit drive to reset it, then anything you've done has to start over, including grabbing this and making it bigger or smaller. All right, so we'll just go back to Drive. So we've now gone through all of these, the new button, My Drive, Shared with Me, all of these different things. We've explored this a little bit. We've taken a look at how they've beefed up search and it works really well. We've gone to settings to see what's there. We realize that the Google apps are missing some things because our district doesn't want us to use Gmail, so it removed it from the Google apps. Question mark, that's another way to get to the Google support pages. That's pretty self-explanatory. We saw that we can change to list layout or go back and forth to grid layout. And I love this new icon with the gray, blue, and the check mark. So we know for sure we are in grid layout. So the one thing that we haven't really looked at just yet is this little information button. And we're going to do that now. And before I do that, I'm just going to click right here. And here's a bunch of features. And where is it? They keep moving it. So let's see if we can find it. There it is. Folder information, details and activity. That's one of the ways that we can get to it. We can click this and we can find it right there, details and activity. If we hover over this, it's going to say view details. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click one time on Google Classes, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click this. Now this opens up and we see the details of what? This particular folder, Google Classes. And you can see all the folders are kind of squished over because I had to make room for it. This is the one window pane that doesn't allow you to get between and drag, so it's going to determine what it wants. So under details, who has access? This is my folder. I own it. And so it tells us where it is. I'm the owner. It says it was modified on June 7th, 2023. It's been a while since I modified that. It was open last then, I guess March 26th. That's today. How about that? It was created back in 2018. So that's really old. And if I had been interested at the time, I could have typed in the description saying, this is an important one because this is where all my class materials are or whatever, manuals, resources, whatever, things like that. I could talk about the details. But look at this, activity. Now this, remember I said that all things Google happen in the cloud? That we have to have an internet connection, and through our browser at near the speed of light, little data packets are going back and forth. Every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard at near the speed of light is going back and forth to the Google server farms, and it's all being recorded. You never have to click save. Well, here it is. On January 5th at 9:29 and 11 seconds a.m., this is what was done. I uploaded a couple of items. And I can go down and go all the way back to the beginning of 2018 when this was created. How did I know it was created way back then? Because we saw that in details. And if at any point I want to see one of these things, assuming that it hasn't been erased, I can click on it and it can open up. There it is. This happens to be a Microsoft Word document. That's pretty cool. So we have all the information. So we're almost done here, and I realize we've kind of gone over, but that's the nature of having a department training where we just kind of cover absolutely everything. So let's just go back to the today's folder and go to details. And again, here's the FAD3 that I shared it with. And it's in my drive. This is when it was made and modified, so on and so forth. And it's shared, and it's a red folder. And it's called today's folder. Sure enough, there it is. Let's look at activity. Now in reverse order, okay, I shared an item at 2:37 p.m. and I made Ringo Starr an editor. And then I moved something at this time and I uploaded something else there. Then I restricted access to Ringo Starr, if you remember, as far as that PDF goes. And every single thing that's ever been done in this folder, all the way back from the time that I first opened it up and created it and whatever, there it is. At 1:52 p.m. on March 26, I created the today's folder. And then 4 minutes later, I added, uploaded these 3 documents to it. And then you remember up here somewhere, I shared it with a bunch of people, and there they are. All right. And these 2 are editors, that one's a viewer. So you can see how comprehensive this information is. So be thinking about your department. If you work with, say, 10 other people and or maybe 100 other people, and you guys share a common folder, and you want to see who's added what, when, or what happened, you have access to the activity and the details to see what's going on. And so that could be a very helpful tool. So be thinking about how you could use it. At the very least, it helps you understand what you did to a folder and why things aren't there. You may have forgotten that changed or restricted access or something, or stopped sharing it with someone at a certain point. You can go back and find basically all the notes down to the second of everything that happened. And as you saw in the Google Classes folder, all the way back to 2018, why, that's 6 years ago. That's amazing. So we have done a Google Drive deep dive. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And we have covered all of the user interface. We've talked about some of the subtle differences of the way things have changed over time, how shared with me, you can no longer move things out, but you can, in fact, move things that are older than 2018, 2019 when they changed the rule. You can still move those to your Google Drive, but there'll also be a copy here because that's the way the rules are, to keep a copy always. If someone shares something with you, you'll always have a copy here. And then any of the new stuff, you can't move it to Drive, but you can put a shortcut in Drive that refers to the folder that is then housed here. We talked about this new feature that just sort of showed up, and Google tried to make me do it automatically by making it my default homepage, if you will. Didn't like it, so I went into settings and I changed it back to regular Drive, which is a much better way to go. Because I don't like this, I'm just going to assume there's a lot of other people that don't like it. A lot of people will complain, and if they do, then this home button will disappear, just like the priority button did a while back. They added an activity place where we can, see if there's comments we need to respond to or something like that. That's kind of cool. It made it easy for us to deal with. Workspaces, still not sure exactly what that is, but I don't want to organize my stuff in any other way. I want to keep it the way it's worked for me for 7 or 8 years. No sense in like upsetting the apple cart, as it were. And I'll have to look into that more to see if this new thing does actually cost us money, and then wonder why the district allowed us to have access to it. Um, all right, the recent one's been added the last couple of years, and that's very helpful. We talked about our favorites. Spam is something that's new, and we've gone over all these other features. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I know this was a very long presentation, but it was a very thorough one, so that we could do a deep dive into all things Google Drive, so that you can have control over all the files and folders that are shared with you, with the ones that you create, that you can organize them in any way, shape, or form that makes most sense to you. So thank you so much for coming to join us today. And we hope to see you in another one of our trainings soon. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.